I'm going to pick up where I left off yesterday, and I want you to always remember that you can always use the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? Leg squared plus another leg squared in your triangle equals the hypotenuse squared. You can always use this anytime you know two sides, right? So, like if you're given this problem, and maybe you know the altitude is 6 and this side is 4, you can always find this leg in your triangle, right? Because it is actually a hypotenuse in this medium triangle, right? It may be a leg in the big triangle, but if you know two sides, you can always find the other. So you could do the 4 squared plus the 6 squared equals whatever this is over here, b squared or c squared, whatever you want to call it. So keep that in mind. All right, let's try one out. You can either pause the video and try it on your own, which I encourage you to do, and then press play and check your answer. Or if you're still pretty uncomfortable with what happened yesterday, well, let's just walk through it together. So I need to find lengths, u, v, and w, and these are test-like questions. Right off the bat, notice, if we wanted, we could figure out what v is, because in this triangle, I know two sides. And I can use the Pythagorean theorem and go 9 squared plus 3 squared equals v squared, because it's the hypotenuse. Okay, it's across from that right angle. But for the purpose of understanding this lesson, I'm going to use what we know about geometric means. Okay, 9 is our altitude, so we're given our altitude, and 3 is a piece. Remember, I'm talking about the big triangle here. 3 is a piece, one piece of our hypotenuse. 9 is the altitude. So that's where I'm getting that information. Okay, now that's going to help me decide what I can find first. Because sometimes I'll be able to find u first, sometimes I'll be able to find w or v, it just depends on what I'm given. Won't always be given the altitude. Okay, so altitude and piece is what I know. Remember, we have two equations. Altitude squared equals piece times piece, and then we have leg squared equals hypotenuse times closest piece. That's supposed to say leg. So if I'm given the altitude, I want to use that altitude equation first. Okay, so altitude squared equals piece times piece. So 9 squared equals one of my pieces, which is 3, times the other piece I don't know. That's u. U is my other piece here. 3 and u are pieces of the hypotenuse. So u times 3. 9 squared is 81. So I'm going to divide by 3. And 81 divided by 3 is 27. Okay, so I know u is now 27. I know my other piece. From there, I can find the other legs. It doesn't matter which one. Like, let's say I wanted to, in my big triangle, I need to find w and v. Those are the legs, right? They make up the right angle. Let's say I wanted to find w. W is a leg, so I need to be using the leg squared formula or equation. Leg squared, the leg I'm working with is w, equals hypotenuse. What is the length of the hypotenuse of our big triangle? Well, the hypotenuse goes from 27 out to 3, so the hypotenuse is 30, and I need to take it times the closest piece. Now remember, there are two pieces, 27 and 3. Those are the pieces of my hypotenuse. Which one is closest to this leg? Which one is touching leg W? That'd be 27. So then I multiply 30 times 27, and I'd get 810. But to get W by itself, I need to square root both sides. So the square root of 810 is going to be like 28 point something, but I want it in simplest radical form. So I'm going to come over here and reduce this. So split it into two factors. Two things that multiply to 810 are 30 and 27. and keep breaking that up. 30 can be broken up into 3 times 10, and 10 can be broken up into 2 times 5. 27, 3 and 9, and 9 can be broken up into 3 and 3. So then find your pairs at the bottom of your tree. Oops, that's not a 3. And write down that pair. There's another pair over here, 3 and 3, so write down that 3. And then notice I still have a square root of 2 and a square root of 5 at the bottom of my branch. Whatever's in a house I can multiply. So 2 and 5 give me 10. Whatever's not in a house I can multiply that and give me 9. So then my final answer for W would be 9 square roots of 10. And now I need to find V. V is another leg in my triangle. So I'm using leg squared equals hypotenuse times closest piece. So leg squared, so V squared, equals the hypotenuse, which is the entire hypotenuse of your big triangle. Again, that's 30. Now what's the closest piece to V? Remember there are 2 pieces, 27 and 3. The closest one to V is the 3. So 30 times 3 is 90. And I need to square root both sides. And the square root of 90. If you break down the square root of 90, you can break it into 9 times 10, or you could have done 3 times 30. But either way you do it, when you get to the bottom of your branches, you should have 2 square roots of 3s, and then you should have a square root of 2 and a square root of 5. So final answer there would be 3 square roots of 10, because you can multiply the houses. Okay, so we found all 3. We have 27 for U, 9 square roots of 10 for W, and 3 square roots of 10 for V. Okay, here's another example. Again, I just have an altitude. It's going from this right angle out to the hypotenuse. So 7.8 is my altitude, and I'm given a piece. So I know altitude, and I know one of my pieces, and I want to know what is the height of the tree to the nearest meter. So the height of the tree represents the hypotenuse of your big triangle. So I'm going to try to find the hypotenuse, and I know the altitude, and I know a piece. Okay, so if I'm given altitude, I need to start with that altitude equation. Altitude squared equals piece times piece. Let's see if we can. Altitude squared equals piece times piece. What represents my altitude is this length here, 7.8. So 7.8 squared equals piece, 1.6, times the other piece, which I don't know what that is. It's from here to here. That's an x. So I square the 7.8, and I get 60.84. And then I need to divide by 1.6. And I get 38.025. But that's not my final answer. I need to know the height of this tree. Well, the height of this tree is represented by this 1.6 piece plus this x piece. So what do I have to do to this x piece? Well, I have to add in 1.6. So my final answer is about 39.625. I think it wanted it to the nearest meter. Yes, to the nearest meter. So we need to round that to 40 meters. It's about 40 meters tall. Okay, go ahead and try this one. What's the height of the cliff? You do the exact same thing. You're given the altitude, and you know one of the pieces. First find the other piece and then add it together. to find the entire height of the cliff. All right, hopefully you got 148 feet. If you needed to use altitude squared equals piece times piece. So you plug in 28 for the altitude, 5.5 for one of the pieces, and you solve for that piece. So you get 142.5 here, and you have 5.5. You have to add those together to get the entire length of the cliff. So add them together, you get about 148.